Hi guys, so this is going to be a follow-on to my previous video, which was ridiculously secure browser. It showed you how to set up a secure jailed Firefox browser in Debian 9 Linux. So if you have not watched that video, I'll leave a link to that in the description of this video, and vice versa, a link to this video in the description of the other video, so that you can find them both pretty easily. Anyway, so you should probably check that one out before checking this one out to get caught up on where we are. But the gist of it is we have a secure jailed Firefox browser that is very, very secure, really, to say the least. So we have this new menu option here with this command in here that will launch our browser in a jailed environment that is highly, highly secure. So let's take a look at that from the actual menu standpoint. You have this icon here that you can use to launch Firefox, and then you have this, which is your normal Firefox launcher, and then you can also run the ESR Firefox as well. So today I'm going to show you some additional tricks and tips that I have learned since recording that prior video to make this an even better experience. It's even cooler now. And so some of this is going to be reliant on KDE features. So if you don't have KDE or you're not using KDE for whatever reason, then you can safely skip those parts. They're just little extra niceties that are kind of cool to do in KDE and may even be overkill from a security standpoint. But they do make it so that it's easier to hide what you're doing if somebody's trying to shoulder surf or whatever. I'll show you some of that as well. So one of the flaws that you might notice with the Firefox setup we currently have, so if I bring up a terminal, right, and we're just going to shrink that guy down a little bit, put him over there, and I did not set the always on top button up on this, so that's fine. We will do keep above others that way. And we'll launch our Firefox secure browser. So if I go in here and I launch a secure Firefox, and then we type firejail tac list, like so, you'll notice that there is a jail running, which this VM is being horribly slow for some reason. But you'll notice that there's a jail running and that its jailed name is Firefox, right? Now if I launch another instance of this, so if I come back up here and we hit this browser up again, you'll notice that if I do the same list command, there are two instances running, but they both have the same name, Firefox. That might not be ideal, especially when it comes to downloading applications or whatever. So let's say you download a file and you try to then extract that file from your jail. You might run into issues where you've got two Firefoxes or two jails running with the same name, or maybe the Firefox is sharing the jail, which I think is actually how that's really going to work, is these are technically one jail. So that's kind of a problem in my opinion. What I would really like is extreme browser segregation, so that every instance of the browser is running in its own jail with its own unique name. So there's a really cool way we can do that. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take this menu here, this launcher script here, and we're just going to highlight all of it. I'm using Control-A, Control-C, and then Control-Shift-V to paste it in the terminal. Oh, that's the wrong one. Let's grab the secure one because that's better. So same steps, Control-A, Control-C, and then we'll just Control-C in the terminal to get a new line. And then we'll paste that in there with Control-Shift-V. So now you can see our true command here. So you guys get to see like this. All right. So what we're going to do is $, parenthesis, cat dev urandom, right? And then we're going to pipe that to tr tac cd quote marks capital A through Z quote marks, and then we're going to pipe that to All right, pipe that to head, taxi 6, and then we're going to do, to close our quote, our parentheses there. So again, what this is going to do is it's going to cat the output of dev urandom, and then it's going to trim it, and it's going to take basically all the characters A through Z, and then it's going to take the head, taxi 6, which is the control of how many of those characters we're going to end up with. And we're going to end up with exactly 6, as you might guess. So what that's going to do is it's going to generate a 6-character string of random letters A through Z for every instance of the Firefox browser we launch. So you can see that in action here. Right? And if I launch another terminal, which I should be capable of doing now, yeah, that's much better. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do, let's actually make it a little bigger so that you can see what I'm talking about here. All right, so if I do fire jail, right, and then tac list, you can now see that the name is a little bit more interesting. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I'm just going to Control-C to end that process, and you see Firefox drop off. We're going to scroll up. We're going to grab our command here. We're going to copy it. Now, just an FYI, if you want to, say, make this a variable so that you can reuse the name in another script, all you have to do is move this out to the front with an export. So it would be something that looks more like this. Export. The name of the variable, so let's see, jail name equals, and then you put this bit here on your export, right? And then you do an and like that. And then if you call in the name such that you do something like this, jail name, what that's going to do is it's going to print the name in there. Now what's handy about doing it that way instead of doing it inline is now you can reuse that. So if ever you say find, for instance, a method of putting that name inside your title bar, which I'm actively looking for, and my lead right now is xdoTool, but I'm not positive that that's going to work quite the way I want, so I'm still kind of experimenting with that. If I find something on that, I may make a third video to show you how to do it, but until then, that's kind of up in the air and sort of more tentative. But the cool bit is you can reuse the name like that in different places, and if you really wanted to go all out, you could make an actual full-on, script to launch your Firefox browser with, and reuse variables throughout this thing so that you have a fully custom non-static script that you can launch with different parameters to make it look a little bit cleaner. But that's a little bit more advanced than I want to get into right now. I just wanted to show you that in fact it was possible, which most advanced Linux users would probably know, that it's possible to do it this way. But for those of you who didn't know that it was possible to do this kind of thing with a variable like that, it is, and it's useful if you can find other ways to use that name in the script without having to, because you're not going to be able to cat that out again and get the same value, is the point, right? So if you put that if you put this code elsewhere in your script, it's going to generate a new value every time it's run. This way you generate one value and you save it in this spot here, and then you can reuse that same value throughout your script this way, right? So that's the importance of it. So if, for instance, you do an xdoTool to set the name, then you can both set your jail name here, and then you could set the name of your window out here with xdoTool somehow. But I haven't figured that bit out just yet. But anyway, so now what we can do is we can take our script, and I'm going to use the one up here, and I'm just going to copy it in here. All right. There we go. Okay, and let's just verify that that took, and you can see that it has. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this. And so now, what I'll do is I'll just close this guy down, and we'll pop up this window here, but not like that. Let's actually pin it that way. Okay, let's pin it this way. Let's see if we can get it to full screen. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a firejail tac list like this, except I'm going to do a watch tac in1, And what this is going to do is it's going to list all the fire jails as they spawn in. So what I can do now is I can show you how these fire jails will look when they spawn. So if I click on this browser, you can see I get this new named guy here, and you can see it's got that random string of characters now. And then if I want to do it again, you can see I get another one with a completely unique and random name. Now, like I said, it is technically, theoretically, although highly improbable, that you can get a duplicate name here, because I'm just pulling random characters out. But it's highly unlikely, and it's probably an accepted, thing. And there may even be a better way to do this where you can guarantee a unique value every time. But I would argue that this is probably, quote, good enough for our purposes here. Certainly better than we were before, where we had a static name every time. And the thing is, if you want, you could, like I said, you could increase entropy by adding more to the length of the names. You could do 6, or you could do upper and lowercase characters. I prefer all uppercase characters like that because it's easy to read. You can clearly tell what those characters are without having to guess, or look at it for a long period of time. It's pretty easy to notice which one's which. And the other thing is if you do go to download something into one of these things, you can easily take these 6 characters and do the FireJail download command. So, for instance, I don't have anything to actually download at the moment, but I can show you the command. So if I wanted to download something from one of these jails, I would type FireJail get equals, and then the name of the jail I wanted to get from. So in this case, it would be like, for instance, this guy here. So I'd copy this, right? And then I would simply paste that in there. And then I would do tilde for my home directory, because it'll be the same, and then maybe downloads, and then slash whatever file name I wanted. .text, for example. Now that file doesn't exist, so it's not going to download anything. And so that's what it'll say if the file doesn't exist. But hypothetically, if a file name .text did exist in the jail, it would absolutely have pulled it down and put it in my working directory. So the directory I'm in, which would be my home directory. PWD shows home Joe. So it would be in this directory. So that's how all that works. And so now you can have different downloads in each jail. And if one of them gets poisoned or compromised or whatever, you can simply, in that process, terminate it, whatever. Which actually you can do that like this. So if you can't figure out which browser you want to terminate because one of them is weird, or you're in a situation where you just can't for whatever reason, you can absolutely just do this. And then you can do, I think, the number of it, so 9193, which, for instance, I'm getting that from right here. I think this will work. Okay, so what you do, to show you, is shut down. No. Okay. Oh, it's because it needs an equal. Okay. So what I would do here is like that. All right, and that should drop that jail, and you can see it happen up here. So also I can shut it down this way too. I can just do like this, and then I can copy this name here as well. And now, because I have unique names, this is very possible to do. Oops. Totally ended up highlighting something on the other terminal there, so we'll copy it that way. Okay, so you can see here that that one will drop now. And so that's the proper way to shut down a jail. Of course, you can also just close your browsers this way, and you'll watch them drop off like that as well. So that's one interesting thing to do. So let's look at a KDE thing that's kind of cool. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to launch a new instance of our jailed browser. So here we go. You can see we've got it open here. So that's kind of neat. All right, and what we're going to do is we're just going to right-click on the top here. We're we're going to go to More Actions, and we'll just do Window Manager Settings. It doesn't really matter if you go directly to it or choose Window Manager Settings, because you can absolutely come in here and do like special window or special application settings. I prefer to be able to see it this way, but if you're doing it for the first time, you should probably do special application settings or special window settings. Application settings will be specific to the application. Window settings, of course, tries to get specific to the window. I wouldn't recommend that one because it's just too specific. But you can come in here and customize it anyway, so it's probably fine. However you want to start, you can obviously modify the rules to what you want. But you generally want them to look about like this. This is for Firefox, and then this one is for Firefox Secure. So we're interested in the Firefox Secure rules, which I've renamed this, and you'd have seen this set up in the prior video, but I've renamed this rule to that because it makes sense to me and it looks less ugly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to Arrangement and Access. Now in the last video, we ended up deciding to say skipping the taskbar was probably not a good idea because it gives you fewer options for viewing the fact that this is a running task, right? Because if you minimize this, you have almost no way to bring it back up. Well, there is a good way to bring it back up, and I'll show you how to do it in just a second here. But basically what these do is skip pager and skip switcher means like when you alt tab or you do you know, a hot command to show like an expose of all the desktops, an expose effect of all the desktops that Katie has in it. The window for your private browser will not appear on that list, right? So you won't see your Firefox. So like if your boss shows up and, you know, comes over your shoulder, or, you know, somebody's looking at something you don't want them to see, you can just use your shortcut command to launch your, you know, your desktop session viewer and switch to another desktop easily. And during that whole process, what you were viewing would be completely gone. Like they won't see that it's open or running, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. But they can still find it on your taskbar. Now, granted, you can also set up your taskbar in KDE so that if you're not on a particular desktop, that window won't show up on this. So if you go into like your panel options here and do panel settings, is it panel settings? No, I'm sorry, it's not panel settings. It is task manager settings. Okay, so in here you can actually tell it, I want to make sure that windows only show up if they're on this current desktop, or if they're on the current screen. The screen would be like if you have multiple monitors. The desktop is if you have virtual desktops. They're all like if you're used to space Mac, for instance, it was called Spaces for a long time. I think that's what they're still calling it. And also KDE has this concept called Activities, which is sort of like virtual desktops, but sort of not. It's weird. I don't really use them, so for me it doesn't matter. I just tend to stay with virtual desktops because I guess I'm old school like that. But anyway, so you can completely control that. But if you really want to be paranoid, what you can do is you can set a shortcut here, and you can say force, and you can edit, and then you can do single shortcut, and then here you just set up a keyboard shortcut like Control Shift F, for instance, right? And then you hit OK, and then OK. Now you'll notice you got your shortcut in here. And if you then click skip taskbar and tell it to force and then hit yes and then hit apply, you'll notice that your shortcut is up on the top on here on this window. So if I switch to another window and then do Control Shift F, it brings me back to my Firefox browser. If I minimize this, you'll notice it's no longer down here on this taskbar at all. It's like it's not running. So unless I know it's there, I can't get to it. Unless, you know, I just look through the task manager or whatever and notice a process running. But generally speaking, you're not going to be able to find that. But if you set your hotkey up, Control Shift F will bring it back. Now the only downside to this that I've noticed is it absolutely does not work for tear off tabs. So if you do a tear off tab like that, you'll notice you don't have the Control Shift F on this torn off browser. However, it is still skipping down here. So if you minimize this, it might be quite difficult to bring it back up. You might have to bring up a task manager, such as what is it? Task switcher. Nope, that's not it. Let's see, I think it's in System, maybe? K-Sysguard. That's it. Alright, here you go. So now you can see your different tasks, and I'm not sure if I can bring this guy up or not from here. But I could kill it. Oh, show application window. Okay, so yeah, if I take this and I minimize it, and then do show application window. Oh, it totally doesn't bring it back. Nice. So what if I close that? And then do show application window. No. No, it doesn't work. Neither does my hotkey. So yes, tear off tabs totally suck at that point right there. Makes it very difficult to work with that. So just be aware that if you're going to set those settings up like that, try to avoid tear off tabs unless you want to lose your window forever. There may be a way to bring it back that I'm not aware of, but if there is, I can't think of it right now. Anyway, so that is an interesting little technique that you can use to hide your surfing quite effectively, I think. Because, for instance, if I do a control or a, what is it, a alt tab? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. So yeah, here you can see that as I switch through these tasks, which is still a little choppy because, you know, VM and all, you can't see on this list my browser, even though it's clearly still there. You can see it in the background in that regard, but it's not on this list, right? And if I had a list of virtual desktops, so if I turn on virtual desktops, let me see if I can even do that under desktop effects here. I'm not sure if my VM will support it. Oh no, it does, absolutely. Oops, I need to click that one. Yeah, it's trying to run a video. I don't want it to do that. Alright, so right now it's set to F8. I don't like that. I actually prefer window key spacebar, or meta spacebar if you will. So now if I do meta spacebar, you can see it zooms out and does the sort of expose effect. If I'd added a desktop, you know, let's add a desktop. I don't know if I want to add too many of these because this thing's slow enough as it is. But you can see that I can, you know, drag windows across to it. But my browser is not over there at all. So if I take this, right, now I do move to desktop too. If I do my expose effect, right, here we go. There's nothing over here. If I click it, there it is. So it's a cool way to hide this, the fact that this window is alive. And then of course if I minimize it or hide it behind something, I can quickly bring it back up like that. I'm actually not sure if I can instantly pull it to another desktop by doing that. No, okay, it'll switch me to the active desktop. If I do my the desktop that it's on, it'll switch my active desktop to the desktop that this is on and won't pull it to a new desktop, which is good because that's preferable. You wouldn't want this getting mixed in. So what's cool about this is you could set up like this is your active session that you don't mind people seeing, and then this is the one where you quickly tab over, look at something, and then tab back over, depending on how secretive you want to be, and if you're trying to hide from shoulder surfing or whatever. This is basically the way to do it. So yeah, that's a fantastic way to hide those applications like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to install AppArmor. So sudo apt install AppArmor. All right. And I should probably also grab profiles and utils as well when I stop being lazy. Oops. I think I have it highlighted. There you go. And then AppArmor. install, like so, right? Fucking utils. There we go. All right, this should give us AppArmor. Okay. And so now, this is actually something I didn't show you guys in the other video, but this is a way to confine your browser even further by putting it in its own AppArmor jail. And it's really not hard to do from what I've seen. I have seen it suggested that you had to recompile AppArmor or whatever with special settings, but I think that advice may be old because it does seem to work. Like if you don't have AppArmor properly installed, you'll get an error when you try to run it if you put the command in there. So, and you won't get that error if you run it when you have it installed properly. So if I come in here, and by the way, you can absolutely see that error in my prior video because I solved that little problem while I was setting it up in the prior video. So in here, if I do AppArmor, ARMOR, right, space, there we go. AppArmor is not loaded into the kernel. Ah, here we go. So let's go ahead and load it into the kernel. So sudo, boom. All right, so I've done a little bit of debugging and I figured out what's wrong. So what I needed to do was go into sudo by etc default fault and then grub. And I needed to add this line here, right? So grub command line Linux default equals quiet, AppArmor equals 1, security equals AppArmor. Once I did that, I simply ran a sudo update tac grub like this. Oops, sorry, without the E. And that made it do this. Then I did a sudo reboot, waited for the reboot to come up, and after that was done, I'm now able to launch this command with the AppArmor line intact, and you can see it there, and you can see that it does in fact pop up my Firefox, which is here. So now I have an AppArmor confined Firefox. Also, I want to point out that if you do sudo apt policy AppArmor tac what is it? Profiles. That is not installed for me, so you don't need that. The only things you need are AppArmor and AppArmor utils, and you should be able to pull this off if you really want AppArmor confinement. Things to know about AppArmor before you do this, though. AppArmor is not compatible with SE Linux. You cannot run them both at the same time. Enabling one should disable the other, etc., and so forth. If you want to run snaps or snappies or whatever Ubuntu's calling that stuff, Debian is compatible with that. They're kind of Spartan at the moment, but if you want to do that, you're going to need to run AppArmor, not SE Linux anyway. So that's kind of cool. Or lame, whichever, depending on your stance on SE Linux versus AppArmor. Advantages of AppArmor over SE Linux is you don't need to relabel your whole stupid file system every time you want to make a change. You're fine. You don't have to worry about what your file system label looks like. AppArmor just enforces rules. It's compatible with more file systems because of that fact. SE Linux is a bit more secure in the fact that it protects from hard links, escaping a jail or whatever, whereas AppArmor, I do not believe, as of now, does. But I may be wrong about that. Last I heard, though, that AppArmor does not work with hard links. But other than that, AppArmor is pretty cool, and it does a pretty good job of jailing stuff. In combination with FireJail, it makes for one mean jailed system. Okay, so the last thing I want to demonstrate is a history tweak that might be of use to you. So, here's what I want to show you. So right now, you may notice if I type history, I type that to grep, and I look for, just for good measure, attack I, fire jail, right? You'll see all of the fire jail commands that I've entered up until this point, right? Which is okay during setup, but maybe not desirable when you're pulling stuff out of your jails. So let's say you don't want somebody to know that you extracted a particular file from a jail. You want to hide that, obscure that fact. One thing you can do to try and help mitigate that exposure is to hide all of your file jail commands from your history. This might not be ideal while you're learning file jail because you may want to have a history to go back to in case you forget a command. But once you know fire jail and your work with it is pretty strong, you can absolutely hide your history in fire jail. It's pretty easy to do. So what you want to do is you want to edit your bash.rc file, or bashrc file, .bashrc. Oh, it's going to be, sorry, /. Okay, so why don't I do, and it's rc, not rx. So what that is that's the bashrc in your home directory. If you are in your home directory, so let's see. Let's go back to home, right, pwd. Right, there's my home directory. If I vi, in this case, I can just do it like this. Bash rc. The other way I could get to it from anywhere on the file system. Anyway, you want to control this file. And what you want to do is you want to come down here and just add a line, right? And here you're going to put the word hist ignore. That's hist ignore, I-G-N-O-R-E, okay? We're going to hit equals. And we're going to type quote marks, and then fire jail, right? And then a star, and we're going to air quotes. And that's it. That's what we're going to do. Now I'm just going to exit this, right? And I'm going to open up a new command prompt. Okay. Now if I type history grep fire jail, right? You should see that the last fire jail command I did was this grep here. So now if I do a new fire jail command, fire jail, tac get, or better yet, let's launch. Let's do a launch command because this will actually, function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch my browser with this command here. All right, just pop that in there. Okay. So now my browser's launched. If I close this browser, it's shut down now. Now if I do a history, you'll notice, ooh, H-I-S-T G-N, oh, okay, I see why. I'm a dummy, and I may not even, I want to try it without this export to see if it can actually work that way, because I don't know that it needs to be exported. What am I doing? Just do bash like that. Okay. So now if we do our history command, and then we do our launch, close that down. Now we'll look at our history again. And you can see that the fire jail commands are not in our history. So if I take my history file, for instance, and I clear it, so what I can do is I can cat dev null, and we'll just output it into bash underscore history. Now if I do a history, and then I do bash, right, I should clear my history. Yeah, so now I have no history. So if I do history, H-I-S-T-O-R-Y, right, I have a history item that is number 1 in length, right? So if I ls, I have that, and now history again. You can see that the history is working as normal, but if I do a fire jail command, say this guy here, for instance, right, I'll just launch that, and then we'll close that down. And now you should notice that my history does not contain the new firejail command. So that is that. The only other thing I want to do now is I want to take this command, because I don't think I did this before, and I want to put this in my edit applications, my line here. This guy, okay, and we're just going to overwrite that. Let's check that it's there. Let's see. We should have our AppArmor entry in there, and we do. Okay, cool. So now we can launch our Firejail with AppArmor intact. We have windows that are practically invisible unless we want them to be there. So even if it's running and we walk away from the keyboard, it's still, if we minimize it, is hard to find. And you know, if you know, and we've got segregation of the jails, so we've got random names in our naming entry, so that's good. So we've got a pretty strong setup here now. Much better and improved, much better and more improved upon than when we started, for sure. The only other thing that I could possibly suggest you do at this point is make another profile if you're going to use ESR. So I said in my last video that I would show you guys that or demonstrate that for you, but I don't think I ever did. So I was pretty sure that most people could extrapolate if they were able to follow along with the video how to do that exactly. But you'll notice ESR is there and then Firefox is there. So if we have a look at ESR here in our list, you can see we have this launch it. Oops. Let's close that down. Did not mean to. Actually, I'll bet I can do this. Yes. Okay. So that's fine. So let's have a look at this command, right? Shift. Okay. So that's the command we're currently using to launch our ESR browser. And this I find inadequate. It would actually be really cool if we made another command like this to launch our ESR browser with, so that it's secure. So that we have a secured version of the ESR. And this is exactly what I did on my laptop. And the reason I did that is because Flash works a lot better if you're using the ESR browser than it does if you're using the non-ESR browser. So for old school backwards compatibility stuff, ESR is currently a good option. But, of course, if we're running things like Flash, that's even more cause for us to be concerned about jailing our browser. So what we want to do is we want to take this command and we want to make it more like this command up here. And it's probably a good idea for us to go ahead and make an ESR version of our profile anyway. So what we can do is we can simply launch our ESR browser with a TAC-P, right? TAC capital P like we did before. We should get our profile editor, and we'll just create a new profile. And we'll call it jail ESR, like so, right? Something like that, okay? We'll just finish that off. And we'll leave that on default because we always want that to be default. And then we'll just simply exit. Okay, now to customize our profile the way we want, we'll just do this and we'll do jail ESR, just as we did in the prior video. That'll launch our ESR browser with our new ESR profile. So it should give us a very defaulty look. And in here we can customize our browser just as we did before with secured settings. I'm not going to go through all of them because I already went through them in the first video. So you should, if you want, you know, to be able to extrapolate between the two. I don't want this video to go for too much longer now. But basically the gist is customize your profile the way you want for your ESR version of your browser, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to exit out of our ESR browser and we're simply going to paste our jail command here. And we're just going to do that down here. And we're going to take this and we're just going to change this guy here from Firefox to user. We're basically going to make this Firefox command here the same as this guy here. Okay. And then we're going to take our tag P and we're just going to add the ESR onto the end of it. We'll test the launch. We should get the ESR version of the browser, and it should be very jailed. And of course, you can come up here and you can right click on this guy and you can tell it, you know, special application settings, or even special window settings. And you can make a new rule for your ESR browser. You know, so if we come in here and we just tell it normal window, and then down here we do window title, and we do substring match, and we do what? Mozilla Firefox private browsing, like so, right? And then up here we can do Firefox ESR secure. Okay, and the window class is this Firefox ESR, so this is going to be different from your other one. And we'll just set our title bar scheme force, and we'll force it to match our Firefox secure browser. And then of course you can tell it to skip pagers and all that stuff, and you can set a different shortcut if you like, whatever. I'm not going to do that in this particular browser because this is just for demonstration purposes. You can follow, I mean, you just saw me do it, so you should be able to take it from there, I guess. Anyway, just okay that, and you should get your title bar. Of course, you can set up your theming and whatever else you want in order to make it the way you want it to be, whatever that means, you know. And now you'll have your browser set. Then if you just X out of that, we'll go back up here and we'll take our line that we had before and we'll just copy that guy. We'll right click on it and copy it. And we'll come in here and we'll make a new, actually I already have it open. We'll just come up here to internet and we'll make a new item. And we'll paste it in there. Oops. Nope, sorry. We're not going to do that. We're going to do what Firefox ESR secure. Like so, right? And now we have a secure version of that. And we'll do what? Secure web browser. Okay. We'll set our command up. And then we can also set a launcher for it. Whatever that means, you know. So, browse. We can grab the same icon. We could use a different icon. I showed you how to do icons in the prior videos. So, except the icons folder has actually changed now in Firefox, ironically, between the first video and this video. So now it's an Firefox browser Chrome icons default. And there you'll see your default icons. I think in the last video we put our icon in browser icons. And that's where I put my Firefox secure. So I'll just reuse that icon for this one. And now if I look in my menu, I should have two Firefox browsers here. One is secure ESR and one is secure. So if I launch them, right? And you can see the difference. You can clearly see them running side by side. You can clearly see that this one's got the, you know, Control Shift F and this one doesn't, so the rules are applying properly. You know, you can see the difference. It's obvious that this is the old one and this is the new one. And if we look in our jailed window list, so let's go ahead and make one of those real quick. So if I do fire jail, right, tac list, there you go. You have your two jailed browsers. So that's it. That concludes the video. I hope these tips have helped you extend your capabilities with your very ultra secure browser. If you guys can think of any more tips or hardening techniques that you would like to suggest, please leave them in the comments below. And I would appreciate any feedback you can give me. Hopefully this helps you guys learn some things about securing a browser to a ridiculous extent.